Think you know everything about the Harry Potter books? We'd beg to differ. There are a lot of secrets that J.K. Rowling keeps pretty close to the cuff. Every once in a while, she'll spill some of them, many times quietly or so long ago that we were too young to notice. So, we did a little digging to find some of the most mind-blowing details about the wizarding world. After reading this, you can actually call yourself a Harry Potter aficionado. Could you imagine if Hermione's last name was actually Puckle? That was almost a very real possibility. While the names we know now roll off of the tongue, J.K. Rowling's original ideas didn't have quite the same ring to them. There's a chance we could have been dealing with years of reading about Neville Puff and Draco Spinks in the book series. Honestly, Neville's last name didn't actually get that much better, but Draco definitely came out a lot better in the end. Could you imagine shaking your head over the crazy things that Lily Moon said about magical creatures? Thankfully, she changed that name to a more appropriate moniker for the Luna Lovegood we know and love. J.K. Rowling is undoubtedly a genius, but we're glad she doesn't always go with her first instincts. Could you imagine how awkward and bloody a family reunion would have been with these two in attendance? There's already so much that connects Harry and Voldemort, like the fact that the Dark Lord killed Harry's family and accidentally made him a Horcrux while trying to ensure he suffered the same fate. It turns out that they're also connected by blood. Harry and He Who Must Not Be Named are related to the Peverils, who have a deep history with the Deathly Hallows. Voldemort is descended from Cadmus Peveril, the beholder of the Resurrection Stone. The stone is put in a signet ring and passed down to his descendants, which the Dark Lord eventually turns into a Horcrux. Meanwhile, Harry is descended from Cadmus' brother, Ignotus. He had the Cloak of Invisibility, which later makes its way to Harry. Thankfully, sociopathy doesn't seem to run in this family. This probably isn't very important in the wizarding world because, even for all the years they thought he was dead, Harry is one of the only people brave enough to say Lord Voldemort's name. For those of us who do not live in a fictional world of magical mayhem, we say it all of the time in conversations with fellow book series lovers. It's too bad that we've been saying it wrong. J.K. Rowling confirmed on Twitter that the T is silent at the end of Voldemort's name. It doesn't seem like she's too broken up about everyone taking a name she probably worked hard to figure out and butchering it for a couple of decades. So, it seems like it's okay to keep saying it with that hard T, or to follow the wizarding world's lead by referring to him as He Who Must Not Be Named. Do you want to find out someone's biggest fear in the wizarding world? Get them to stand in front of a boggart, which becomes the physical embodiment of the thing you're most afraid of. Voldemort and Dumbledore never stood in front of one in the books, but J.K. Rowling has revealed details of what a boggart would become if they ever encountered one. Dumbledore's would be his late sister, Ariana. She had a troubled childhood and a relationship with her magic, eventually killing her mother by mistake. Dumbledore was forced to give up his plans to go abroad to take care of her, something he resented. Ariana ended up as an innocent casualty in a duel between her brothers, Albus and Aberforth, and Gellert Grindelwald, who'd go on to become an infamous dark wizard. Maybe Dumbledore was always afraid of her inability to control her magic, or maybe he's afraid to really face his role in her death. Either way, his sister remains his greatest fear. Voldemort's isn't really too hard to figure out if you think about it. His boggart is his own corpse since he's afraid of death. With all of the Horcruxes he made and hid across the world to avoid death, it's really no surprise. It eventually caught up with him in the end. By now, we're sure you know that Dumbledore was gay, but you may not know the entire story of his greatest and possibly only love. Gellert Grindelwald, yes, the one partially responsible for his sister Ariana's death, was a close friend of Dumbledore's and came into the wizard's life while he was grappling with his new role as head of his family. Dumbledore quickly became intrigued by Grindelwald's plans for wizarding domination, and in Rowling's own words, he fell very hard for this boy. They planned to go on a search for the Deathly Hallows together, but their plan came to a tragic end a couple of months later when Aberforth confronted them. He told Dumbledore he couldn't go anywhere without Ariana, and apparently not happy with the situation, Grindelwald performed the Cruciatus Curse on Aberforth. That's the unforgivable curse that inflicts torturous pain on someone. A violent duel ensued between the trio, and Ariana was killed by a stray curse while trying to intervene. Grindelwald fled Godric's Hollow immediately. Over the years, Grindelwald put his evil plan into action and was using the Elder Wand to terrorize Europe. Dumbledore tracked his old friend and challenged him to an hours-long duel that became known as the greatest ever fought between wizards. He spared Grindelwald's life in the end, possibly because he still had some feelings for him. Rowling has said that the relationship marked Dumbledore in a very negative way, leading him to become quite a lonely person. We still don't know if Grindelwald ever reciprocated those feelings, but we do know Dumbledore regretted their friendship years down the line. The only thing we really learn about Professor Minerva McGonagall during the series is that you trifle with her at your own risk. Hermione's boggart is actually McGonagall giving her a failing grade. We've discovered in the past few years that she had quite an interesting past. In addition to being at the top of her Hogwarts class, McGonagall was a member of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. Unfortunately, a fall during her final year that left her with a concussion and several broken ribs meant she couldn't finish out her final game. Before becoming a Transfiguration teacher, her Transfiguration teacher was actually Dumbledore, she took a job at the Ministry of Magic. During the summer before she started the job, Minerva fell in love with a Muggle from her hometown, Dougal McGregor, and he proposed. Under the International Statute of Secrecy, she would have lost her job if she told him about her abilities and been forced to stop using her magic. It's a fate her mother chose when she married her father, who was also a Muggle. So, McGonagall broke off the engagement and took the job in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. After leaving to work at Hogwarts, Minerva remained close to her former boss, Elphinstone Urquhart. He proposed marriage to her several times, but she always rejected him because, despite breaking their engagement 3 decades before, she was still in love with McGregor. When he died, she accepted Urquhart's proposal. Sadly, he died 3 years later from a venomous tentacula bite. All this time, we thought the professor didn't have a personal life. The truth is, a little more messy and a lot more interesting. Every Harry Potter superfan knows that Remus was bitten by Fenrir Greyback, but they may not know why. This wasn't a situation where little Remus wandered too far into the woods at night and was attacked. It was an act of revenge. Remus's father, Lyle, was recruited to join the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures to help monitor the types of beings Voldemort was using for his cause. Fenrir Greyback was brought in for questioning in the 1960s, following the death of 2 Muggle children. But the only one who realized he was a werewolf was Lyle. He wanted him detained until the next full moon, and when his colleagues laughed, he said werewolves were soulless, evil, deserving nothing but death. Fenrir was enraged by the comment and hatched a plot. He broke into 4-year-old Remus's bedroom through a window and attacked the child. Lyle reacted in time to save his son's life, but Remus still ended up with lycanthropy. It's probably a good idea to hold your tongue about someone until after they leave the room. You never know if he's a psychopath who will try to kill your child. The Mirror of Erised had the ability to show wizards their heart's desire. When Harry looked into it, he saw himself standing alongside his parents, who died before he had the chance to know them. Ron, who felt invisible to the truth, but we never did find out what Dumbledore actually did see when he looked into the mirror. J.K. Rowling revealed that he actually saw his family, alive, whole, and happy. His sister and mother were alive, his father was not in Azkaban, and his brother, who distanced himself after Ariana's death, reconciled with Dumbledore. Like most things in the mirror, this wish never came true. Even before you see any kind of physical manifestation in the films, you get a chill just by reading a description of the Dementors. They're the soul-sucking creatures who take away every bit of happiness in their vicinity. How on earth do you come up with something like that? For J.K. Rowling, it came from her battle with depression. Her mother had multiple sclerosis and died in 1990, leading her down a dark emotional path. The Dementors are an effort by Rowling to describe depression to someone who's never experienced it. She once said in an interview, "I know sadness. Sadness is to cry and to feel. But depression is that cold absence of feeling, that really hollowed-out feeling. That's what Dementors are." There are a lot of deaths that really hit us hard throughout the series, and Remus Lupin's is one of them. It turns out his death saved us from another equally heartbreaking one and actually carried a lot of symbolism. J.K. Rowling originally planned for Ron's father, Arthur, to die after he was bitten by Voldemort's snake, Nagini. She opted to save him in Order of the Phoenix instead, because she realized there were so few good fathers in the book series. At the end of the day, someone still had to go, so she decided on Lupin and added in Tonks to make a symbolic gesture. Because the couple just had a child, Rowling wanted it to echo what happened to Harry and remind everyone how evil Voldemort's mission was. This death still hurts, but it makes more sense now. It's true that Professor Trelawney only made 2 accurate prophecies in the books and possibly in her entire life. She predicted that Harry would be the one to end Lord Voldemort's life, and that Peter Pettigrew would escape to rejoin He Who Must Not Be Named. When Dumbledore invites her to join his table at a Christmas meal, she immediately declines by saying, "If I join the table, we shall be 13. Nothing could be more unlucky. Never forget that when 13 dine together, the first to rise will be the first to die." She never sat down at the table, but she didn't need to do so for the prediction to be true. Here's what no one knew at the time. Pettigrew was in Ron's pocket disguised as Scabbers, so there were already 13 people seated. Who was the first to get up? Dumbledore. Think of a Patronus as a reflection of what makes your soul happiest. Remember, you can only conjure them up by thinking of something that makes you happy. It can't just be something like ice cream either. This has to be something that, in your darkest moment, can bring you enough feelings of joy to cast a strong spell. Many times people think about the person they are in love with, and their Patronuses can take forms that complement one another. Lily Potter's Patronus was a doe, while James was a stag. We're not sure whether that was the case for them before or after they fell in for one another, but this indicates that this was true love for both of them. An interesting but sad tidbit. Snape's Patronus turned into a doe after Lily's death because of his love for her. There were some early signs, besides the obvious attraction as they got older, that Ron and Hermione were meant to be together. You probably missed all of them. The first was when Hermione smelled Amitentia, a love potion. The aroma reminds a person of the things they find most attractive. When she smelled it, she got whiffs of freshly mown grass, new parchment, and a third smell that wasn't identified in the books. J.K. Rowling later revealed that it was Ron's hair. There was obviously an attraction on her part very early on. We also know they were fated to be together through their Patronuses, which complement one another. Hermione is an otter, which also happens to be Rowling's favorite animal. And Ron is a Jack Russell Terrier known for chasing otters. It probably took a little over a minute to sort Harry into Gryffindor. At the time, it felt like quite a while to wait for an answer. It turns out this was a pretty short deliberation compared to a few others. It's rare, but Sorting Hat can experience a hat stall, meaning it takes more than 5 minutes to choose a student's Hogwarts house. The only book characters in the book who experienced true hat stalls were Minerva McGonagall and Peter Pettigrew. The Hat spent 5.5 minutes debating whether to place McGonagall in Gryffindor or Ravenclaw. It also took quite a long time to decide if Pettigrew belonged in Gryffindor or Slytherin. In the end, they were both sorted into Gryffindor. Of Harry's peers, Hermione was very close to being a Hatsall. Like McGonagall, she made it tough for the Hat to choose between Gryffindor or Ravenclaw. Neville's deliberations also took a bit longer, because he was trying to convince the Hat to put him in Hufflepuff. Ironically, he thought he wasn't courageous enough for Gryffindor, but he definitely proved his younger self wrong at the Battle of Hogwarts. Of course, the physical plants themselves look nothing like their real-life counterparts. Could you imagine one that made the sound of a crying baby? That would definitely raise a lot of eyebrows. The names are anything but fake. J.K. Rowling said she used to collect the names of plants that sounded magical. The problem is that they would be few and far between in most books. Her luck changed when she stumbled upon Culpeper's Complete Herbal, a 17th-century work by botanist Nicholas Culpeper. The book features witchy names like flaxweek, toadflax, and fleawort. Those words definitely added a lot of color to Professor Sprout's herbology class.